How many times have you tried to explain yourself, justify yourself, argue, beg for understanding, and ended up feeling even weaker than before? How many conversations have you rehearsed in your head, creating imaginary dialogues where you would finally be understood, respected, heard? But the truth is only one. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you explain, the more desperate you seem for acceptance. There is a kind of pain that is not physical, nor obvious. It is the pain of being invisible even when you scream, of being disrespected even when you try to be polite, of being belittled while trying to be understood. And you know what's worse? The more you try to prove your worth, the more you seem to lose it. The more you try to show your intentions, the more others doubt them. There is a brutal truth that no one has ever told you outright. Explanation is the currency of the weak. The need to justify yourself is a symptom of a loss of inner power. The ancient philosophers knew this, especially the Stoics. Epictetus, with his surgical coldness, wrote, "It is not necessary to explain to others why you do what you do. The very course of your actions is your explanation." But we were not taught that way. We were taught to apologize, to justify ourselves, to ask for forgiveness even for existing. We were conditioned to talk too much and act too little, to fill the silence with words, as if silence were something to be feared and not a weapon. And that is exactly where your mistake lies. In the compulsive attempt to control others' perceptions of you, behind every excessive explanation, there is fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing someone, fear of appearing less than you would like to be. But today, that has to end. Today, you will learn the most powerful response there is: silence. Not the cowardly silence that runs away from conflict out of fear, but conscious silence, chosen, calculated. Silence that does not ask, does not beg, and does not give in. You will understand that there are times when the only legitimate response is none. That true power is not in speech. It is in self-control, because every time you react with words, you give something away. Your energy, your emotional stability, your psychological territory. And as long as you continue to act this way, you will be manipulated, you will be sucked in, you will be controlled. But there is another way, a darker way, colder, stronger. That's what we're going to talk about today, and you need to be prepared, because after you hear this, you will never interact with the world in the same way again. From now on, every time you are provoked, every time you are emotionally manipulated, every time someone tries to drag you into the realm of explanation, you will remember this moment, and you will choose silence. Now take a deep breath, focus, and make room inside yourself for what comes next. Because what I'm about to reveal to you will become a new internal law, a new code of conduct, one that can save you from years of emotional wear and tear. 1. The power of ignoring provocation. There is a kind of silence that does not mean passivity. It means power. It means a conscious choice not to play the other person's game. How many times in your life have you reacted on impulse? How many times have you responded without thinking, just so you wouldn't feel humiliated? How many times have you fallen into the emotional trap that someone else set for you, just because you couldn't stand the idea of staying silent? Ignoring a provocation seems at first glance an act of weakness, but it's just the opposite. It takes inner strength to endure the discomfort of not responding, to endure the look of contempt, the sarcastic smile, the poisonous comment. It takes brutal self-control, to remain unshaken. The provocateur thrives on your reaction. They want to pull you into their camp. They want you to lose your composure. They want to see you break down. By reacting, you give them exactly what they want. You confirm the narrative they have created about you. Epictetus, in his almost cruel coldness, said, "When someone provokes you, remember that it is your response that feeds them." Silence cuts the chain. Your anger is their fuel. Your lack of control is their victory. From now on, you need to learn to do things differently. When the veiled insults come, when the public provocations arise, when that comment is made just to throw you off balance, breathe. Look them in the eye if you have to. But remain silent. Let the absence of your response be the most painful blow, because true power is choosing where to put your energy. And wasting energy on small people is a luxury you can no longer afford. 2. How silence disarms manipulators. Manipulators are masters at creating emotional turmoil. They don't need to raise their voices. They don't need to shout. All it takes is one word out of place, an insinuation, a half-truth. They throw the bait and wait. They wait for you to take it. They wait for you to justify yourself, to explain yourself, to give in. Manipulation is a psychological chess game, and as long as you keep reacting, you're always a few moves behind. The manipulator studies your patterns. They know exactly what irritates you, what makes you anxious, what makes you lose control. And that's why silence is your most lethal weapon. When you don't respond, the cycle breaks. When you refuse to play, the board collapses. The manipulator depends on your emotional predictability. They depend on your willingness to explain yourself. They depend on your need to be understood. But when you give them silence, like they lose their script, their mind, which was ready to lead you to collapse, begins to lose its way. They try new strategies. They insinuate other things. They force new situations. And the longer you remain silent, the deeper he sinks into his own toxicity. Seneca, another master of emotional coldness, wrote, "The greatest punishment for those who try to manipulate you is not being able to affect you. Silence is the manipulator's downfall. It is the mirror that reflects back to him, his own lack of control. But I must warn you, so keeping this silence is not easy. The manipulator will provoke you more intensely. They will accuse you of coldness. They will try to make you feel guilty. They will play every emotional card they have, and that's when, exactly when, you need to stay focused, because what's at stake is your emotional sanity, your vital energy, your psychological freedom. Now think, how many times, just this past week, did you engage in conversations that you knew were traps? How many unnecessary explanations did you give just to try to keep the peace? Is it time to start reacting differently? Or better yet, not reacting at all? While you think about it, know that what comes next is even more uncomfortable, because we are leaving the realm of provocation and entering the territory of identity. 3. The technique of responding with actions, not words. Have you ever noticed how people distrust those who talk too much? Those who promise, swear, explain, but don't deliver? There is a silent rule, engraved in the collective unconscious. The more someone needs to justify their actions, the less certain they are of the truth. You don't need to say you've changed, you need to show it. You don't need to argue about how strong you are. You need to act like someone who is strong. The world doesn't listen to speeches. The world observes behavior. How many times have you tried to explain your intentions to someone who, deep down, had already made up their mind about you? How many times have you come up with emotional defenses? Trying to convince someone who didn't want to be convinced? The most powerful response is the silence of action. It is the sound of a life that goes on, regardless of the approval of others. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, left behind a piece of advice that has stood the test of time. Don't waste time arguing about what a good man is. Be one. And that's what you need to do from now on. Want to show that you've overcome something? Overcome it for real. Want to prove that you no longer depend on someone else? Build your emotional independence from day after day, without making a fuss. When people realize that you've stopped responding, that you've stopped asking for understanding, that you simply started to act, the energy around you will change. Those who underestimated you will feel the impact of your active silence. Those who hurt you will realize that they have lost the emotional access they had over you. And the best part? You will begin to regain something you haven't felt in a long time: self-respect. It's not about proving something to others. It's about proving to yourself that you can live without begging for recognition. 4. How to create mystery around you. There is a huge difference between being invisible and being enigmatic, between being forgotten and being a mystery. People who say everything they think, everything they feel, everything they want, become predictable, and predictability unkills respect. Mystery, on the other hand, is a psychological force field. It makes you unpredictable, interesting, uncontrollable. When you don't explain your actions, others begin to create hypotheses. When you don't justify your choices, they start to observe you more closely. When you disappear for a while instead of justifying yourself, they start to wonder what happened. Silence, combined with consistent actions, creates a kind of invisible magnetism, a field of doubt, of emotional tension. The human mind hates gaps. The brain is programmed to seek meaning, to fill in the blanks. And when you become the void, the enigma, the silence, you force others to think about you, trying to figure you out, worrying about you, even if they don't admit it. The Stoics, without social media, without voice messages, without long texts, already knew this. They walked calmly, they spoke little, they observed more than they reacted. Seneca wrote, "Those who talk too much reveal their weaknesses. Those who remain silent rule interpretations." Think about the people you respect the most, those who, when they enter a room, don't need to say a word to be noticed. They have a presence that precedes any speech. You can build that. Starting today, begin to measure your words as if you were measuring poison. Speak only when necessary. Answer only what is unavoidable. And when you can, choose silence. Let others feel your absence. Let your lack of response be a response in itself. Mystery is not an ego game. It is a strategy for emotional preservation. It is the shield of those who have learned that you don't have to be transparent to be true. Now take a deep breath, because what comes next is the darkest part of this journey, the phase where silence ceases to be a defense and becomes a weapon of emotional impact. 5. When silence becomes your best revenge, there comes a time when you stop wanting the last word. You stop dreaming of that perfect speech that would silence all your detractors. You stop rehearsing that conversation in your head where you would finally put everyone in their place. You give up. And not out of weakness, but out of enlightenment, because you understand that the greatest revenge is not an attack, but its absence. Silence, at this stage, ceases to be a strategic choice and becomes a state of existence. You no longer react, because the other person no longer matters. You no longer justify yourself, because you know that any words would be wasted on a dead emotional field. It is at this point that the game turns around, when you realize that the only person who deserves your attention is yourself. But before you get there, you will face the worst within yourself, the fear of disappearing, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not having a voice, the fear that the other person, when they no longer hear from you, will simply go on with their life as if you never existed. This is the greatest ghost in your emotional shadow, the fear of insignificance. You try to fill this void with answers, with explanations, with confrontations. But what really hurts and what keeps you stuck in this cycle is the silent panic of not being remembered, of being just irrelevant. The narcissistic wound screams, "Speak up, show that you matter, demand to be heard." And that is exactly why silence is your cure. By choosing not to respond, you kill the needy ego. By choosing not to justify, you dispel the illusion of control. By choosing to disappear emotionally, you force the other person to deal with their own emptiness. And here lies the true revenge. Silence forces the other person to talk to themselves, to face their own ghosts, to question their own behavior. While you move forward, grow, rebuild yourself, the other person is stuck in doubt, in the echo of your absence, in the discomfort of not knowing what you think, what you feel, what you plan. Silence becomes an invisible presence. It haunts, it disturbs, it disarms. But there is one detail you need to know. and that most people never tell you. This process will also break you inside, because to remain silent, you have to endure. To silence, you need to bleed in silence. There will be nights when you want to back down. Send a message, explain, try to be understood. And in those moments that you need to remember this phrase, those who learn to be silent also learn to control their own destiny. The reconquest of your emotional power will not come through dialogue. It will come through your ability to endure discomfort, to embrace absence, to accept that not all stories deserve an ending. Silence is your last act of resistance, your last line of defense against manipulation, emotional blackmail, and ego games. Now, visualize this. You walking toward your future without looking back. Behind you are the echoes of conversations that never happened, explanations that were never given, justifications that were never born. The weight of your absence that will be greater than any presence you have ever had, and it is at that exact moment that you will understand. Your peace has always been worth more than any words. Take a deep breath, because now it's time to end it all. The next step is closure. The moment when you will decide, once and for all, whether you will remain a prisoner of the need to be heard, or if finally you will choose emotional freedom. Now you know the weight of your words. You know the cost of every explanation you gave and every silence you couldn't sustain. You know how many times you betrayed yourself for fear of being misunderstood, how many times you begged with beautiful words for a little respect and received only contempt. You know how tiring it is to carry the weight of wanting to be understood all the time, how much it hurts to see your own dignity slipping through your fingers. With every response given in the heat of the moment, your whole life you've tried to fix the way others see you. You've tried to mold your personality to fit the expectations of others. You've tried to explain yourself, to justify, to clarify, as if that could change the emotional truth of those who never bothered to understand. But now, it's time to stop chasing interpretations that don't belong to you, to stop building emotional defenses that only wear you down, to stop looking for epic endings to stories that have always been shallow, because there is a freedom that only comes when you learn to be silent, a kind of power that only flourishes when you accept that. Most of the time, the other person doesn't deserve to know your version. People don't hear what you say, they hear what their own insecurity allows them to hear. And the more you try to change their perception, the further you get from yourself. Epictetus, with his honest harshness, left a warning that now makes perfect sense. Don't waste energy trying to explain what others have already decided not to understand. Your silence is your shield. Your lack of justification is your cry for autonomy. Your ability not to react is the beginning of your true emotional revolution. Starting today, every time the urge to explain yourself comes, take a deep breath. Feel the discomfort, accept the pain of momentary misunderstanding, and stand firm. Every provocation ignored is an exercise in inner strength. Every manipulation diffused with silence is one less scar on your soul. Every decision to remain silent when everything inside you screams to respond is one step closer to emotional mastery. And one day, when you look back, you will realize that the silence that seems painful today will be the same silence that protected your peace. Now, before you leave this video, I want you to make a choice. If you really felt every word, if in some way this content touched parts of you that were dormant, like this video, but not just a simple click, make it a little ritual, as if you were saying to yourself, from today, I choose silence, I choose my balance. And if you still feel that you are in the process, that you have not yet mastered this art, that you still slip up, comment, I'm still learning to be silent. Write this down as a public commitment to your own transformation. And if there is someone in your life, someone you know who is trapped in the need to respond, explain, justify, someone who is sinking emotionally because they don't know when to be silent, Share this video with that person, because maybe what they need right now isn't more advice. It's a harsh and necessary reminder. Remember, true strength never makes a sound. It just exists. Now, close your eyes for a few seconds. Feel the echo of these words inside you. And when you open your eyes, choose either continue the same old cycle or starting today, your own ritual of silence. The decision is yours.